Hey, it's Chris, Serious Land Capital, vacant land funding partner. So today, wanted to give another update about probably the most problematic deal that we have in our portfolio, this Tennessee infill lot. I know I've remarked on it before. Actually, before starting, if you listened to yesterday's episode about the 50-acre Texas deal where the buyers spent 50K on their due diligence and unfortunately backed out due to water drainage issues for their planned development. And initially, it seemed like they weren't going to give up their DD that they had spent, but we did have that in writing within our contract. And as of today, they actually are going to hand that over. So that'll be advantageous for us to have. We already have the properties relisted. And fortunately, the child tracks have a fresh days on market counter. So that's always going to happen when it comes to the algorithm and just general buyer interest as well. Whenever you can get a fresh count, because lower is always going to be better. So the other property, this roughly 2-acre Lakeview lot that we have in central Tennessee, we knew it was a higher variance property when we bought it 6 months ago. And it's just proven extremely tricky. To where we initially listed this one at 70, and we thought reliably it could exit for probably between 55 to 60K. I just dropped the price to 35K today, so I mean half off. Obviously that falls on us, even though they don't have money in the deal, it's still, the brokers, they obviously were off on their assessments. Everybody was off in terms of how we thought this property was going to perform. And so I just wanted to mention a couple, kind of strategies on how we're dealing with a tricky situation like this. Now it's, how do we reduce our loss as much as possible here? And, in some of these tricky buyers markets, like you've got to pull out every stop. So I personally cold called a ton of builders. Some even went to visit the property. Nothing really stuck. We also listed on some of the other third-party platforms, all the various Tennessee Facebook groups, and we actually got a lead over this weekend. And so it was this woman who was actually visited the property, and she had a budget of roughly 25 to 35K. She loved the area, but was like, "Hey, I want a cleared lot." To find something that's just going to be more of interest for her and her family. I really had to consider that. I hate throwing more money at bad deals, but I'm also like cognizant. Okay, I still don't know what the bottom is for this particular property. I think I'm nearing it, but if I could get this lady to agree to 35K, and that's what I told her it was priced at, could I potentially get a home site cleared for K max, based on previous properties similarly sized, actually a little bit larger. We got work done for that at most. I don't know how thick these trees are, how much work would actually be required, but if I'm like, all right, if we could get a clearing done while we get this woman under contract, there is still inherent risk. Like if they bail at the end and we end up clearing for nothing, either way, it's still a value add. But having to throw more money at the deal when it's already going to be a net loser. But I posited that back to her. It's like, okay, hey, we're willing to clear it at the cost of my company if we're able to go under contract. She asked a bunch of follow-up questions. Hey, let me talk to my husband about this. Asked for all these like perk tests and numbers for planning and zoning, and I handed all that over. Like this was, and fast responses too. Again, great customer service. Like you should be responding to people as quickly as possible. Like this is a problematic property, one that I'm like personally taking responsibility for to figure out how to move. And in situations like this, you got to do what it takes to be creative and sort things out. And even though most of my instincts and general decision-making guidelines, like, don't throw more money after bad deals, if it's still a route where I could get a deal done at basically break-even pricing from the gross price, plus I could just negotiate with our brokers, hey, we brought this buyer in, can we reduce the commission percent, whatever, to sort that out. So that gives us a little bit more leeway there. But, we'll see if she comes back and see if we can get her under contract. In the meantime, I went back to the brokers, hey, let's drop this price again. And they had already indicated, hey, we were initially at 6% commission. This has gotten so low. We can do 4% here. But I also brought up with them, our listing agreement. We never signed listing agreements longer than 6 months. That's coming up at the end of June here. Let's really formalize, okay, it's going to be a lower commission to find a way to sell this. And again, I reminded them to hey, this is obviously underperformed all of our expectations. We cut the price in half from initial listing price. That's it, you can't ignore those facts. Massive discount, and we've still had very minimal interest. It's just been an all-around bad deal. But I also threw a carrot in there of hey, if we can extend as necessary, obviously we'd love to get under contract prior to this current listing agreement ending, which technically they have in writing, where they would still have the higher commission percentage. So they're still incentivized from that side anyway, even though I think tacitly they would agree to lower. But also through, hey, we'll give you guys a good realtor review as needed. Hey, and just be honest with it. This was a super difficult property, but they found a way to work with us, more agreeable terms, whatever. Sometimes that can help with other businesses too, and challenges arise. Who rises to meet them, and are they able to renegotiate and look out for their clients' best interests as well, even at the cost of potential commission to them? So I threw that back at them. Again, they've been fast responders here, and I can't totally blame ultimately again these issues. They fall on my company's the one that wired out the money. It was just a bad deal overall. And, we just can't ignore that fact. But all that considered as well, it became a trickier market. And these realtors saying, yeah, it's just, they're not trying to hide behind any facts. They're yeah, this is, we're perplexed by this market as well. We're struggling to sell homes in the area. It's just been trickier. And I'll do another pod soon about this too, but a lot of these COVID boom markets, there's just a lot of extra inventory, especially in infill lots, or SFR inventory, and a lot of folks have just migrated back to the Midwest and Northeast, which is just kind of a remarkable trend when we consider where we were a few years ago. So we're dealing with that within this Central Tennessee market as well here. That's certainly not helping anything, along with just the general macro uncertainty that has been expressed ad nauseum. So just wanted to update you as far as hey, even when deals go bad, you still got to pull out some extra cards here. How can you reduce the damage as much as possible? How can you be creative with buyer? If buyers have an upper hand on you, what else are you willing to sacrifice to get out of a nasty deal? Because sometimes it's not just about the dollars at stake, but it's also the mental bandwidth that's taken up. That's arguably more valuable. When I'm waking up in the middle of the night thinking about this deal is just bothering me so much. Got to get it off your plate and just know, okay, how much pain am I going to have to eat to move on from this one. So that's just another consideration as well. Hopefully this is helpful if you're stuck with a nasty property as well, or even if you're not at the moment. You may encounter one in the future. Hopefully not. I don't wish it on anyone. But it's the nature of being in business. Sometimes things don't go as planned, and you have to figure out how to dig yourself out of holes. So with that in mind, seriousland.capital for any of your funding needs, zero cost review of your land deals at Land Daily Diligence Facebook group, and landpricer.ai for the most simple and efficient way of pricing land deals, reliability within an easy to use software. Subscribe and share. Talk to you all tomorrow. Take care. Bye.